Liberty Nation. Truth is making a comeback.
Hi, Lisa K. Donner here with Mark Angelides, and the topic today is Brexit, as it is here and mostly everywhere. What is going on? Is the United Kingdom going to leave, or are they not? And why am I hearing a lot about April 12th? I thought today was the day.
As did everybody else who voted for Brexit, Lisa. So not everybody really knows what's going on. It's quite a confusing time in the UK and in the EU for the EU Commission.
For a referendum.
But the key fact about April 12th is that this is the final date for Theresa May to come up with a deal that is acceptable enough to the British Parliament, the House of Commons, that she can then say to the European Commission and the presidency that we now have a deal, we're ready to leave under the terms of Article 50 with this deal. The deal is a whole other ballgame.
I bet what's stopping Britain from leaving? I mean, how hard can this be?
This is about our country.
You wouldn't think it'd be that difficult. There's a lot of talk about what's called a cliff edge Brexit or a no-deal Brexit. But what this really means is that Britain would begin trading as basically a third party country, which is what the US is. It's a third party country, so we'd have the same if there's tariffs on certain goods, but it would also cut back on tariffs from the rest of the world because obviously the EU is quite a protectionist unit.
Brexit,
So,
withdrawal agreement,
what people are
referendum
really, the main issue why it hasn't happened yet is that the people within Parliament, the majority of parliamentarians, don't want Britain to become separate from the EU. They want the EU to stay, and therefore they're frustrating the idea of actually getting a no-deal Brexit or a WTO, World Trade Organization terms Brexit, because that would make us just like America, which would for them be terrible.
Right, so they're frustrating the will of the people. How did this become a really bad British comedy of errors?
No good for Scottish. No good for Scottish.
There's a great speaker called Yanis Varoufakis who puts it incredibly well, and he points out that this came about because the EU, when negotiations started for how Britain would leave the customs union, because that's all it's really supposed to be, is a customs union, not a political union. And he points out that when the negotiations started, the EU put forward, we're going to have this as a two-phase negotiation. First, we'll tell you everything that we want. And then, once you agree to that, we'll listen to what you have to say about what you want. And that was the error. This is an error that nobody could possibly make except those who wanted to stay in the European Union.
Now, I know you're usually in England, but right now you're in the U.S. Can you assess the mood for us? What's going on with your fellow countrymen?
Mr. Speaker.
Sure. It's often difficult to tell when you use the media, the television, the dailies as your source of information. But digging beneath the surface, the fact is that 85% of the British public voted for parties in the last general election that in their manifestos pledged to take the UK out of the EU. So the vast majority of the British public just want it over and done with. They want Brexit completed, the divorce, as they call it, the divorce from the EU over and done with. That's the mood, and it's quite an unhappy mood at the moment because it seems that
So anyone who wants
it's still up in the air as whether it's actually going to take place or not.
A further extension.
It's interesting. When we were in Italy, we sat next to a British couple, and I think a lot went on for this vote to begin with. For instance, the husband voted to leave, and the wife voted not to leave because she was terribly frightened by, I guess, all that they were saying. So I think, there's been a lot of conflict, but still, it was a rather decisive vote.
The question is as on the order paper. As many as have that opinion say aye. Aye! Of the contrary, no. No! Division! Clear the lobby!
So I'm wondering, what are the big players saying now?
Well, that depends on who the big players are. If it's parliamentarians who are not always, I mean, these are people that we don't recognize on the streets. You know, there's 650 of them, and we don't recognize half of them. But the main players, you've got obviously Nigel Farage, who Mr. Brexit himself, and he has just taken over the leadership of a new political party, which is called the Brexit Party. So you can imagine they have one goal in mind, which is to extricate the UK from the European Union. And if Britain doesn't leave the EU on April 12th, it's entirely possible that the nation will have to take part in the European elections for the European Parliament, which means that Nigel Farage's new party, the Brexit Party, will likely pick up a lot of seats, along with the United Kingdom Independence Party as well. UKIP, under Nigel Farage's leadership in 2014, won more seats than any other British party. So he's a force to be reckoned with for sure. So that's going to happen. He's getting ready for battle, essentially.
Does it look like May is going to be able to hold on?
Prepared to leave this job. Well,
she's actually offered to throw herself under the EU gravy train, as it were. She said that if her withdrawal agreement goes through, which, to be completely honest, most people suspect that the withdrawal agreement, the deal to leave the EU, was written by Brussels and handed to Theresa May. This is the common consensus. I don't know how true that is. But she has offered to throw herself under the EU gravy train if Parliament accepts her withdrawal agreement. And if they don't, it looks like she'll hang on for as long as possible or call a general election.
Alrighty, Mark Angelides, managing editor of LibertyNation.com. I think my dog wants to leave the European Union right now. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and read Mark's fine articles on Brexit and many other things on LibertyNation.com. Have a great day.